Hello, one and all, to the wonderful, amazing PPC Unfiltered podcast. I am your co-host, Cory Lindholm. On some part of the screen here, Michael Nadalin from Australia is joining me of MarketLead. Michael Nadalin, how are you, sir?
I'm great, Cory Lindholm. How are you? That's the most important thing. How are you, Cory?
I'm doing all right. No, things are great. Things are great. We're hitting the second half of October of 2024 to date this episode a little bit. I'm sure in a year or two I'll have even less hair, believe it or not. So if you're watching this in the future, yeah, I looked pretty good, right? No, yeah, things are good, man. We're gearing up for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. I don't want to hear your comments, Michael. No comments.
No. I'm just going to say grow a mohawk, mate. Grow a mohawk.
I'm working on it. Yeah. So yeah, we're gearing up for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. A lot of my clients have been trying to spend more in October than in previous years, which I think has been a good learning over the last few years. You know, we don't want to just hit the brakes in October because then we compromise on volume in November. But that's a whole nother subject. But that's kind of where I'm at. So what about for you guys? What strategy changes are you seeing right now this time of the year?
So that's interesting. I reckon we should have a conversation today about the Black Friday stuff, and more of a healthy debate, because I feel like you and I would have two very different perspectives on it, and looking at it from a different way. But yeah, are you asking more from the e-commerce aspect of like how we're noticing strategies? Ask the question
generally again, generally speaking. So, you've been doing this a long time. Have you seen something different this year than what you've seen in years past, gearing up for the November-December wave?
Yeah, so we're probably about like 60 to 70%, actually probably like 75% lead generation. So that's very different. In our e-commerce clients are very unique. They sell their own products and they're well-run businesses, which means that some of the strategies that are commercialized online around Black Friday are just not relevant to the clients and are actually going to be more damaging if we go for that. And I've spoken to every client about this, and we spend more time actually talking about the strategy of it rather than any execution of it, because I feel like there is like this mass hypnosis in the advertising industry around Black Friday. And I think the people who are just like prepare for Black Friday are people who are not actually good at this stuff, because not in a bad way. It's more just like I think people just blindly say Black Friday, or like November, like that type of stuff without actually understanding the consequences of discounts on a business from their profitability standpoint and their brand perception as well. Because the two things that can come up is, number one, most companies, if they're reselling items, the margin isn't strong and they're competing against everyone else who might have a better shipping offer or a better discount because they're a bigger retail. Secondly, if they're their own original products, the profit margin's usually strong, but you're cutting into a profit margin that is probably essential for them because they're self-developing, like they're developing the products themselves. They're doing all the things. So margins in retail are already lean, even if it's your own product, before you're doing advertising costs, shipping costs, fulfillment costs, all these other things. So cutting that profit is silly. Also, it can also create a perception of that, this brand does discounts. Now, if you're a brand that holds yourself as a high standard, not a high standard, but like as a premium product, if you start offering discounts, you're training prospects or people who buy from you to delay buying because they think they'll get a discount, rather than going, look, like Lindholm fashion does not discount. So if I'm going to buy it, I'm going to buy it now. It's better for me to buy it now before it sells out next month. The other thing is, which a couple of years ago, Cory, just when we were becoming friends, but we weren't doing the podcast, you recommended a book called Confessions of a Advertising Ad Man.
Yeah.
And one of the things I picked up from that book was, when companies run sales, if they look along enough time horizon, they see a spike when they get the sales, like volume, but then it'll dip off. So like actually like over time, if you run the sale or you don't, your sales volume will be mostly the same. Now, I've just said a lot of things right there. I know because of the type of clients you work with, you will have a very different points to me, and I'd love to hear it. I just know with the clients we've been working with, like, and these are clients spending a lot of money on it. It's like a lot. And I know yours do as well. You've got to come at this really strategically because it can impact a lot of parts of the business. It's not just like we'll get more sales, because more sales, you could actually make less money because the profitability is not there.
Very possible. Now, I think actually the one you're talking about, it's not David Ogilvy's Ad Man book, right? It's Confessions of a Pricing Man. I think that's the one.
That's it. Yeah.
Just for you folks that are curious, you want to read it. You know, what are these two geniuses reading? I'm kidding, guys. We are very humble over here. Well, I am. Just kidding. The author
I'm not
here, Michael's not. He is admittedly not a humble man, and he's proud of that, of course, ironically, right? The author is Herman Simon, Confessions of the Pricing Man, How Price Affects Everything. So just wanted to give that for the audience out there if you're curious about checking out. Fantastic book, especially if you run an agency and you're looking into how to price yourself and price your services. Absolutely amazing book, an oldie but a goodie. Awesome. So back to the Black Friday, Cyber Monday thing. So my point was something that I've been seeing differently this year is the amount of advertisers that have, outside of the 2020 anomaly, right? Even 2021 for some anomaly. When we look at correlating spends to transactions, what I mean is spend in October or sometimes even sort of second half of September leading up to how does that spend level correlate with the transactions or revenue that we're getting, assuming sales and the promos and the products we're offering are pretty much the same, right? How do those things track, right? So if we spend, let's say, $10,000 in October in a given month, we're going to run the same 30% off that we always do in November. How has that changed over time? And what if we spent $20,000, $30,000? You can build predictive models for these things. So what I'm seeing is a lot more advertisers. And of course, because I pride myself on the sort of data science knowledge set that I bring to my clients, I'm able to look at these things for them at a really granular level and say, okay, buy product or buy a campaign type, whatever, what seems to make sense? How much should we be spending? Where should we be pushing the threshold to lead up to November? And so a lot of advertisers that I work with and some that I consult with as well, they are seeing that, spending more in September is already leading to much higher sales in October. That's without any sales. And that's showing some trends also that we're seeing in the sort of advertising world where you're hearing this more. Like we need to be spending more in October. Instead of just pulling out in October and just hitting the brakes, we want to be warming up audiences to then hit those audiences later with an advertisement. And it's going to be much cheaper for us. Instead of it being completely cold and we're fighting everybody for that cold audience in November, think high CPCs, high CPVs, whatever. These are remarketing audiences now, much cheaper, hopefully, if you're doing your job correctly, much cheaper, more efficient ad spending there. And so therefore we can capitalize on the high demand, but cut down on how much we have to spend for each of those clicks or views or whatever. So I am seeing sort of a transcendence over time of it used to always just be like, let's just cut the spends for October because we see conversion rates are down. Rather, we need to be more sophisticated. We need to be looking at it as an omni-channel marketing strategy. We don't want to just cut spend altogether. We probably want to be keeping brand awareness, think Facebook, whatever, relatively high. This also could mean your demand gen campaigns, your YouTube campaigns, whatever is generating that awareness. Let's keep it going to stable or sometimes higher levels if you want to get aggressive and just to test that to see what you can get inside of November. So that's some of the bigger changes that I'm seeing.
Yeah, awesome, man. I had so many things just come through my brain just then. So, wow. Well, number one, you and I are we love this report, but in Google Ads, you can see the attribution report, like the time lag or the time path. So from the first interaction to a purchase, and depending on your business, sometimes it's a few days and sometimes it could be weeks. And I've got e-commerce clients that it's usually about 2 weeks. So if you're just wanting to pull that back to the start of November, when is Black Friday? I don't even know. What is the date?
Oh, it's the Friday after Thanksgiving. So that's Black Friday. Cyber Monday is the Monday right after that.
So what's the date of that? We don't have Thanksgiving in Australia.
Right, yeah. Come on. Americans, we think everything applies to everybody else in the world. Let's see. Black Friday. Let's just do Black Friday 2024. think, gosh, I should know these things right offhand. But yeah, November 29th this year.
Yeah.
Friday, November 29th.
So even if you start advertising at the start of November more aggressively, everyone else is. Like, the thing is, you're just actually like helping the ad channels make more money. And then you've obviously got the US elections happening as well, where that's got is like such a high ad spend that's going to be across YouTube, Facebook, Meta, even Google. Now, Google search is probably not going to be affected. Like, if someone's looking for a blue dress, they're not going to see a Donald Trump blue dress or like a Kamala Harris tie. I mix those political people around. I think it's really understanding your attribution window. Number two is even when you're priming these audiences for retargeting, which is good, if you're still getting people on their original first few clicks from you, being it like they haven't really heard of you, they're clicking through, people may not have brand loyalty yet, but they may have like product loyalty where they're looking for the product. So it depends on if you're selling your own individual product or you're reselling. If you're reselling something, figure out a way to retarget those people because they're going to be in the market. Mm-hmm. And people buying products that you resell are usually going to be the ones who would want a Black Friday deal because they know a lot of retailers offer it. So they're just going for the better price. Mm-hmm. If it's an original product that it's yours, for example, you're selling like that NASA jumper and it's like Lindholm NASA jumpers and no one else does it except for Temu. What I would recommend is run ads to the page, but then the pages, but make sure you're figuring out a way to capture people's emails because people might go, this is a sick jumper, cool. And then you're just relying on them to remember it or you're retargeting, which you're competing against everyone retargeting. If you can get someone's email address and then you start using your email or Klaviyo flows, when it comes to the Black Friday, you've got a one-to-one relationship with them in their inbox. Now, yes, they're going to be hit up with other people's emails, but there's more likelihood of them seeing an email from you than seeing a retargeting ad because the retargeting is just going to go hectic. And you're going against all the big retailers, like all of them, especially in the States. So my thing is, number one, understand that if you're just turning off ads now and thinking you just turn it back on, Google Ads is not the tap anymore. Like you just don't turn it on, water comes out. There's a time, especially around this period, people are going to wait a bit longer because they're looking for a deal. So you've got to figure out ways beyond remarketing. How do you get people's information to remind them of this awesome products that you sell before the fact? And that's what's going to happen.
So guys, if you don't see me looking at Michael, it's because A, he's giving me some good ideas for our conversation. I like to take a lot of notes. I'm a nerd, so I take lots of nerds. Nerds. A lot of nerdy notes. God, it's late in the day for me. All right, we're going to keep this going. So a couple of things that came up for me. So really great point on the remarketing audience. That's regardless of if you're a reseller or not, because I think one thing that we always forget, I think as advertisers, is that big slump that's going to happen probably second half of December, or it's just in some cases December as a whole for a lot of advertisers. They've sort of just emptied the bucket of warm audiences. Is not everyone is going to be happy with their purchase in November. So what I'm saying is if you can at least get the interest in them coming to the site and maybe an email capture, but they don't convert, it might not be that you've lost the war. You might have just lost the battle. Right. So what happens is you get that email and then you guys optimize your email funnels. So crucial. We talk about it all the time. And then it's very possible they went to somebody else to buy that product, but then they were very unhappy with that purchase. Guess what? Now you can hit them with a cheap, high quality, relevant remarketing ad, either via email, which you should do, but also bringing them back to the site come November. And that's going to help you stabilize and keep some of those sales slumps from happening in December. So really underutilized technique.
Hand up, because I'm polite. No. So this is we're talking before the fact of getting the sale. There's also post-fact issue. Number one, the more you sell, statistically, the more refunds you'll get in percentage-wise and absolute. So if you usually sell 100 units of something a month and you get a 3% refund rate, you got 3 returning. If you sell 200 the next, like that Black Friday, you're probably actually going to get a higher refund rate because people might just be emotionally buying. It tends to be at times, I don't know, I'm actually just saying stupid right now, but there's a probability that you'll get higher returns. The next thing is your stock levels. This is the thing. If you sell out of stock and let's just say, we sold all this stuff, but then what happens in December when you're trying to restock? I know a lot of clients that their supply lines are like literally like, even when it's their own product, they can't get it for 6 months.
2,
And
3,
these are key
6
products.
months.
So it's like,
oh yeah,
would you prefer to get all these sales in one period of time and the profitability is, let's say, 10%, or get the same amount of sales over 3 months, but your profitability is like 40%? That's the thing. It's like, it's not just, people just think this is just the, like, this is when I was originally saying about that ignorance of people around Black Friday. It's like, yeah, you can get most of your sales, and they're just thinking about like sales numbers and revenue. But a real business person understands, one, profit margin or profitability, absolute profit, and then also like supply line or fulfillment, which is like, what happens if you sell out of everything and it's your key product? What happens next for the next 3 months? Like, you've gone from, you usually make 100K a month every month. Then 1 month you go, let's just say in Black Friday, you go 250. Yes, we're up. And the next month you're down to 20K because it's like, oh, we didn't plan. We don't have enough stock. We can't get it from the suppliers because they're selling it to everyone else. And it's the same thing. Like, people really need to be like aware of their supply lines. And most people think, oh, I've got too much stock, or it will be fine. It won't be, because I see this shit all the time with really, really, really amazing business, like really smart businesses, like people who I'm like, they're smarter than me. And that's hard to do. But even then, and it's like, because they don't predict the actual sales or growth, and then they just go, maybe like next year we don't do the sales. That's why I'm saying this stuff, because they realize they can get the sales, but the profitability or the profit they make is just not worth it in the end, because it affects their supply line over the next 3 months.
Yeah.
Really important. Really
Absolutely.
important.
We're going to make this a thing. We can just make this a thing.
You go, dude.
So that adds one other layer. There's one other layer I want to add to that, because that brings up a really good point of just, again, not just narrowing your focus and your analysis on what happens in November. Think about what happens in December. Think about what happens in October. And I think October always gets slept on, because we just make all these assumptions about, it's going to be a poor sales month. Conversion rates are going to suck. It's going to be lower budgets, not as much data analyzed. Let's just kind of like expect what we've always expected and just go into November with guns blazing. But let's talk about that, right? Because October, you are going into November, you're expecting your profit margins to be your profits to go down, right? You're expecting, because of the percentage discounts are going to be so deep, you're not going to expecting such high profitability. Well, guess what? If you were to, instead of cutting all of your spends in October, keep funds pretty high for advertising and get those sales at a nice level for the business, you're offsetting to some degree all that lower profitability going into November. So as an agency or a manager, think about this. You can include this in your conversations about, rather than us just dropping spends, which is, we're all going to say is going to hurt the algorithm. It's going to be, take longer to adjust the spends back to November, whatever. Also integrate that business knowledge in there, the sort of marketing 101s of, hey, you know what? Profits are going to suck in November. How about we help offset that by keeping spends at a pretty good level for October? Something I don't think is brought up enough.
Yeah. Well, this is why I said it's going to be not a debate, but we're going to have different angles, because it's not just a clear-cut thing. People treat it like it's so clear-cut, and they actually do. Like, they're not just giving generic advice out there. They're like, do this. It's like they actually genuinely believe it. When I see people on like LinkedIn say this stuff, I'm like, guys, like, I can tell you've like, and they all self-admit that they've only been in the industry for a few years, but it's like, that's damaging to businesses. It's not just like an opinion, because you're setting like this expectation and hypnosis around this time of year that it should be like your prime time and everyone get ready for it. I actually think it's probably one of the worst times for business, because they're rather than just operating at their norm, like that they are comfortable with, everyone's telling them, no, you need to be operating up here at a higher expectation. You're putting more pressure on the business, lower profitability. And it's like, that's really hard for retail. And people think like, oh, e-commerce is easy. Like, you're just selling a product. Like, the profit margins in e-commerce or like retail are not what they were like 5 years ago. CPM, CPCs, everything's gone up. More competitors come into the market selling the same product. So you've got to be price competitive. So like the profit that was here is here. And then it's asking for more and more off. It's like, you've got to think about the consequences. And this is why we'll talk about in our next little bit, Cory, is about like, really being more of a business consultant and actually understanding data or actually understanding money more than just being like an ad strategist, because the ad strategist is like, honestly, it's the easy part. For people like us, it's the easy part because it's very linear. You do this, you get that. You do this, you get that. But you've got to actually really understand the consequences of the decisions you're making strategically in the ad account and for the business, because it will affect the business. And people are like, oh, we'll just do this, we'll get more revenue. It's like, yeah, but the business might actually lose money after that.
That's the thing.
And for the next few months.
Yeah, you can't just say, oh, conversion rates are going up, let's just spend more. It's not that simple. And if you're not considering that business like it's your business, you're going to probably mess something up, and that's not a good place for you to be. Michael, before we wrap up this episode, I want to throw in a couple of big tips for people going to Black Friday, Cyber Monday. One is when you're doing your analysis, probably for your business, especially if you're an online retailer, look at November as this completely different segment of data. So don't compare it to October. I mean, like we said, you got to integrate those insights. You want to consider it, but don't, month over month. You're not going to be like really looking at November versus October. You want to look at the transitions and the trends that you see, et cetera, but treat it as a unique data set in your historical performance data, right? So a couple things. One that I look for that is really 80-20 is what products or product types or product categories or departments really outperform in November. And is that different than the rest of the year? You might be surprised. Don't make assumptions. Too many people I see make assumptions. Oh yeah, rings tend to sell really good in Christmas. Look at the data. See if that's consistent year over year. And if it is, make sure that you have structure in your account that allows you to push that particular product type or department harder. That could be a separate campaign if you're using PMAX, because you can't do it at the asset group. My biggest complaint with Performance Max, maybe it needs to live in a different shopping ad group, a standard shopping campaign, whatever. Don't forget search campaigns for specific Black Friday search terms. I see this missed all the time. If there is a noticeable amount of search volume behind very specific Black Friday deals for your products or services, make sure you're targeting those keywords as aggressively as you can, obviously within your profitability. And then last thing I'll throw in there, Michael, is just audiences. You may want to consider doing a nice little refresh of your PMAX asset group audiences with, now usually PMAX audience signals are something more for the getting it going, a brand new campaign, but I don't think it's a bad idea to hit them with a refreshed audience just for the November audience. So you take essentially all of your historical data that you have, hopefully it's a lot, and you build an audience of just people who bought during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, or November as a whole when you were running promotions. Create a unique customer list for that, upload it into Google, use that as an audience signal just for that time so that Google can also understand that, maybe this is a little bit different than the normal customer that we see. Utilize some of those settings and those opportunities in the account. Really, really important to test those things out, see if it makes a difference for you.
Yeah, nice. And always optimize your feed. Just remember at the end of the day, 80-20 with like e-commerce is like, it's mostly the feed. And even in that, it's product titles, product descriptions, and even your categorizations or custom labels and product types. Like, while sometimes these things can sound complicated, there is a simplicity to it. Put custom labels on products. If they're high sellers, low sellers, overstocks, whatever they are, put them into their own campaign so they actually get delivery. That's one of the biggest issues I'm seeing now is like companies with products that they want to sell or high profit products, they're just not being delivered because they're being cannibalized with other products. So make sure that you're strategically putting products in campaigns where you know they're going to get the appropriate delivery and they're not going to be cannibalized. So recently I've just done this literally 2 days ago, a client who's got 40,000 SKUs and only like 1,000 of them have been getting impressions. So it's like had to segment them down based on impressions, if they're getting clicks, their results, and then based on their product types, just to ensure the products are actually being seen. That's the worst thing here. It's like you can do all this hard work, but if your product is not being seen on the Google feed, you're like, what's the point?
That's why you don't throw it all into one PMAX and then call it a day. You've got to be, if you want to be an advanced advertiser and you want better results, you've got to think more granularly. Now, sometimes it might work better if it's all consolidated, but I usually find that there's more to the story than that. So I'll leave it at that for now. But Michael, any other?
I'll just quickly say, it's amazing when it just works when it's all consolidated, but when it doesn't work, which is most of the time, you're like, ugh. And then you got to start segmenting, and it's like, okay, so you got to. It's a bit of give and take with Google.
It's a bit of a give and take. Anything else you want to add? I was just going to throw in a one really fast point about just checking diminishing returns. So if your products, if certain products are pretty steady because you've been selling them for years, the data is pretty steady, just try to figure out if you can, if you're capable with your own data analysis skills or using ChatGPT or whatever, try to figure out for those products where in November you find that a point of diminishing returns where profitability starts going down a certain level of spend. You might be able to help yourself in saving a few bucks here and there, and in some cases thousands of dollars by having an answer for that. Now, it's not going to be perfect, but it's better than having nothing.
Yeah, awesome. I've got nothing else to add to that for now.
Okay.
Don't give me another 5 seconds because I'll start saying stuff.
All right, let's go into another segment here.